The stories you're about to watch weren't written for entertainment. They were shared by real people on Reddit. Every single one of them claims this actually happened. Watch until the end, because some of these stories only get worse. The listing said the host wouldn't be present. That was the first thing that made the guest feel safe. It was a small basement apartment rented for a week, cheap, clean, and close to downtown. The host messaged politely, explained the keypad, and added one line at the end. "I live upstairs, but I'll be out of town during your stay." For the first day, everything felt normal. The guest unpacked, went out for food, came back late. The space was quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps. No voices. Just the low hum of pipes behind the walls. The second night, he noticed something strange. When he returned around midnight, the lights in the upstairs unit were on. He assumed plans changed. Maybe the host came back early. It didn't bother him much until he realized something else. The basement door was unlocked. He was certain he had locked it. The next morning, the host messaged him first. "Hope you slept well. You were up late." The guest paused. He hadn't mentioned getting back late. He brushed it off as a guess and replied politely. That night, while lying in bed, he heard movement above him. Slow footsteps. Someone pacing, not randomly, but back and forth, directly over the bedroom. Then came the sound of something being dragged. The next morning, a new message waited. "You moved the chair again. Please keep it where it was." The guest stared at his phone. He had moved the chair. He'd dragged it closer to the bed to put his backpack on it. No one should have known that. He checked the listing photos again and noticed something he'd missed before. A small door in the back of the basement, half hidden behind shelves. It was unlocked. Behind it was a narrow staircase leading up, straight into the house. That night, he didn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., he heard breathing. Not upstairs, inside the room. He froze under the covers as a shadow passed slowly across the wall. A man's silhouette, standing close enough that the floor creaked under his weight. The breathing stopped. In the morning, the guest packed everything and left without saying a word. Later that day, Airbnb emailed him. They said the host had been banned weeks ago. Multiple guests had reported the same thing. Someone living inside the house the entire time, watching, taking notes, and never leaving. The first time it happened, she assumed it was a mistake. She was a young professional, living alone in a small apartment complex. One of those older buildings with narrow hallways and identical doors. She'd stepped out late one night to throw away trash. When she came back, her key wouldn't turn. The door was locked. From the outside, she stood there confused, heart thumping lightly, until she realized something unsettling. She hadn't brought her keys with her. She'd only been gone for seconds. No one else had access to her apartment. She knocked on a neighbor's door. A man helped her call the landlord, who arrived half an hour later. He joked that old locks sometimes stick. She laughed with him, embarrassed, and went to bed. The next morning, the deadbolt was still engaged. From the outside, she told herself she must have locked it without realizing. People forget things all the time. Then it happened again. 3 nights later, she stepped out to check her mail. When she returned, the handle wouldn't budge. This time, she had her keys. The deadbolt was turned fully, cleanly. as if someone had locked her in on purpose. Her hands shook as she unlocked it. Inside, nothing was disturbed. No missing items, no open windows, just silence. That night, she placed a small piece of clear tape across the inside of the door frame, barely visible, a trick she'd seen online. In the morning, the tape was gone. She started paying attention. Footsteps in the hallway after midnight, a faint click near her door, the soft scrape of metal against metal. One evening, she opened her door just as a man stepped back into the stairwell across the hall. Quiet, average. He smiled politely and disappeared downstairs. The next time her door locked from the outside, there was something new. A note slid under the door. "You forgot your lights again." She hadn't turned them on that night. Panicking, she called the police. They checked the hallway cameras. There was footage. Every night, the same man stood outside her door while she slept, watching, waiting, turning the lock carefully. When officers went to his apartment, they found it empty, except for a chair facing the door and a notebook on the floor. Inside were dates, times, notes about her habits, and one line circled in red: "She stays in when the door locks." That night, she didn't go home, but the lock on her door still turned, slowly, from the outside. The roommate moved in during the middle of the semester. Quiet, polite, the kind of person who nodded instead of talking. He stayed in his room with the door closed. At first, there was nothing strange about him. The person this story follows was a college student. He was sharing a 2-bedroom apartment near campus. His schedule was chaotic. Late classes, overnight study sessions, weekends spent crashing at friends' places. His roommate, on the other hand, seemed to be home constantly. Too constantly. Every time the student came back after a night away, the roommate was asleep on the couch. Same blanket, same position, mouth slightly open, breathing slow and steady, like he hadn't moved in hours. "Long night?" the student asked once. The roommate didn't answer, just stirred slightly and went back to sleep. It happened again and again. No matter when the student returned, 2 a.m, sunrise, even mid-afternoon after staying away overnight, the roommate was always asleep, never groggy, never disoriented, always perfectly still, like he'd been waiting. One weekend, the student left town entirely. He was gone for 3 days. When he came back Sunday night, the apartment smelled stale, unused. The roommate was asleep on the couch, same position, same clothes. The student laughed it off nervously and went to his room. That night, he noticed something unsettling. His bed sheets were warm, as if someone had just gotten up. The next morning, he checked the front door. It hadn't been opened the entire weekend. No dirt disturbed, no lock turned. He started paying attention to smaller things. Food in the fridge going missing when he wasn't home. His desk chair slightly out of place. His laptop lid closed when he knew he'd left it open. One night, he stayed awake, in his room, pretending to sleep. At around 3 a.m, he heard movement, slow footsteps. The bedroom door creaked open just enough for a sliver of hallway light to cut across the floor. Someone stood there, breathing softly. Then the footsteps moved away. The next day, the student confronted his roommate. "You ever go into my room?" The roommate stared at him for a long time before speaking. "You sleep heavier when you're gone." That was when the student packed his things and left. A week later, the landlord called. The roommate had never been on the lease. No one with that name had ever applied. When police entered the apartment, they found the couch untouched, but the bedroom showed signs of use. A second pillow, indentations on the mattress, and a note taped inside the closet door. "He doesn't wake up when I sleep next to him." The first note showed up on a Tuesday morning, tucked neatly under the windshield wiper. The woman this story follows assumed it was a parking warning. She lived in a crowded apartment complex where notes like that were common. But when she pulled it free, it wasn't from management. It was handwritten. "Running late today? You'll skip breakfast." She frowned, confused. It felt oddly specific, but she shrugged it off. Coincidences happen. She drove to work, skipped breakfast like she usually did, and forgot about it by lunchtime. The second note appeared 2 days later. "Don't take Maple Street tonight." That one made her pause. Maple Street was part of her normal route home. Still, she ignored it. That evening, traffic backed up ahead. Police lights flashed in the distance. Maple Street was closed due to a serious accident, right around the time she would have been driving through. Her stomach tightened. She started checking her windshield every morning. The third note was waiting for her on Friday. "You stayed too long at work." He noticed. No name, no explanation. That night, she double-checked her mirrors while driving home. Every car felt like it lingered too long behind her. When she parked, she hurried inside and locked the door. The next morning, there were 2 notes. One on the windshield, one on the driver's seat. The one outside read, "You forgot to lock your car." The one inside said, "I didn't." She reported it to the building manager. They checked cameras in the parking lot. There were blind spots. Someone knew that. The notes kept coming, predicting small things at first. Where she'd stop for coffee, when she'd leave work early, when she'd stay in. Then they changed. "Don't go home tonight." She laughed nervously when she read that one, tossed it aside, tried to convince herself someone was messing with her. She went home anyway. Police cars lined the street. Her building was blocked off. An assault had happened in the stairwell an hour earlier. The suspect description matched her closely enough that officers asked questions, took her name. Let her go. The final note appeared the next morning. This one was folded carefully, placed dead center on the windshield. "You weren't supposed to be there yet." She sold the car 2 days later. Months passed. She moved cities, changed routines. But one evening, after parking outside her new place, she noticed something on the windshield. Same handwriting, same ink, one sentence. "You still don't listen." And this time, it was written on the inside. A man moved into the apartment across the courtyard in early winter. No one noticed him at first. He didn't have visitors. He didn't play music. He didn't even turn on his lights most nights. But he noticed everyone else. The person this story centers on was a graduate student. He lived alone on the 3rd floor. His routine wasn't strict. Some nights he studied late. Some mornings he slept through alarms. But after a few weeks, he started feeling watched. Not in a dramatic way, just a quiet, persistent sense that his movements were being tracked. It began with small coincidences. Every time he left for class at 8:40 a.m., the man across the courtyard would be standing at his window, coffee mug in hand. He was staring straight out. When he stayed home sick one day, the man never appeared. When he went for a late-night grocery run, the man's light clicked on. The moment he stepped into the hallway, at first, it felt harmless, maybe even accidental. Then the notes started appearing. The first was taped to his apartment door, plain white paper, neatly folded. "Running late today. You should leave at 8:55. He laughed it off, assumed it was a joke from someone in the building. But the next morning, his alarm failed. He didn't wake up until 8:52. The second note appeared 2 days later, slipped under his door. "You didn't check your mailbox yesterday. Don't forget tonight." He hadn't told anyone that he was waiting on an important letter. Still, when he checked that evening, the mailbox was already open. Empty. That night, he finally confronted the man across the courtyard. He stood at his window and waved. The man waved back, slowly, calmly, as if he'd been expecting it. The next note arrived the following morning. This one was different. "You should stop going out on Friday nights." No explanation, just that. He ignored it. On Friday, he left around 10 p.m. When he returned, police cars were parked outside the building. An assault had taken place in the alley behind the complex. The time window? 10 minutes after he'd left. The description of the suspect matched him closely enough that officers knocked on his door, asked questions, took notes, let him go. The final note arrived the next day, taped carefully to the inside of his door, as if someone had been inside. "You were lucky this time. Next time, you won't be home." Panicked, he called the police, explained everything: the neighbor, the notes, the schedule. Officers crossed the courtyard and knocked on the man's apartment. No answer. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no personal items, just stacks of notebooks lining the floor, each one labeled with dates. Inside were detailed entries of people in the building, their routines, their absences, their mistakes. And one notebook, thicker than the rest, had his name. On the cover, the last page was already written. "Tonight, he won't listen." A date circled in red, a time, and beneath it, a single sentence. The house sat at the end of a quiet suburban street, the kind lined with trimmed lawns and identical mailboxes. When the man moved in, he noticed something immediately. Everyone was watching, not staring openly, not waving, just standing. On porches, near windows, beside parked cars, heads turning slowly as the moving truck pulled up. There was a family directly across the street who stood together in their driveway. Father, mother, 2 kids, all of them silent. Still, they watched until the last box was carried inside. That night, the man brushed it off as small-town curiosity. New faces always drew attention. He unpacked, ordered takeout, and went to sleep. The next morning, he found a note, taped neatly to his front door. "Welcome home." No name, no signature. Over the next few days, the family across the street became impossible to ignore. Every time he left, for work, they were outside. Not always doing the same thing. Sometimes watering plants, sometimes sitting in lawn chairs, but always positioned to see him. When he came home, they'd stop what they were doing and watch him unlock the door. He tried waving once. No one waved back. A week later, another note appeared. "You got home late last night." He hadn't told anyone his schedule, and he was sure the family had gone inside by the time he returned. Things inside the house started feeling off. The hallway light was on when he knew he'd turned it off. Cabinets were slightly open. His shower curtain was pulled back instead of closed. One evening, while taking out the trash, he overheard the family talking across the street. The mother spoke quietly. "He eats around 7. Lights off by 11. The father nodded. "Still hasn't checked the attic." That night, the man didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, he heard footsteps above him. His attic. In the morning, he called the police. They searched the house thoroughly, found nothing, told him he was probably stressed from the move. But when officers crossed the street to speak to the family, the house was empty, furniture still inside, plates on the table. A TV paused mid-show. It looked like they'd just stepped out. The man decided to leave. As he packed his car, he noticed something carved into the inside of his front door, words he hadn't seen before. "You finally noticed." Across the street, the family stood together again, watching him go, smiling this time. These stories are real, and they happen to ordinary people. Subscribe if you want more true horror. Like the video if this one made you uneasy, and comment if you think you would have noticed the signs sooner.